All right. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our little ecosystem day presentation for today. This is what we call charmed OSM in a box. And the idea is that we want to be able to simplify OSM and sort of simplify it specifically towards Kubernetes deployment. So reducing the resource requirements of OSM and being able to just have, a quick and opinionated way of installing OSM. So to give a little bit of background, next slide, Canonical in the OSM community. Canonical has been part of OSM, I believe, since its inception. Mark Shuttleworth is currently the senior advisor, working with the leadership group and end user advisory group, et cetera, to be able to help set some of the direction and guidance for OSM in the long-term strategy. I'm Mark Beierl. I'm a TSC member and have been serving on the TSC since about June of last year. With me today is David Garcia, who's the N2VC module lead. It has been for quite some time now, a couple years at least. And we'd like to welcome Gulsum, who is our RO module lead. She just, with the vacancy for the RO MDL, Gulsum just joined and volunteered and stepped up to that position. In addition, we've got Matya and Wajia, who are the task force leads for VNF onboarding and Marcom respectively. So a little background on OSM day 1 and day 2 operations. So OSM attempts to bridge the gap for last mile configuration. It's one thing for software to be able to be deployed, virtual instances started up, connect to a PNF so that we know where it is, deploy pods in Kubernetes. It's something else to perform that last mile configuration, basically localizing these things to each other so that they're aware of each other and any sort of data exchange can happen. And day 2 operations, which is the ongoing care and feeding. If we take something simple like a Radius server, AAA inside of a VPC, day 2 operation could be things like adding and removing users or changing subscriber keys, things like that. So this is part of the value, or a significant value, that OSM brings to the lifecycle of network services. So next slide, moving on to the charm operator. So what we have here is any of this code for day 1 and day 2 does need to live somewhere and execute somewhere. So the charmed operators are used to be able to give that code a place to live and be able to communicate with the network function for the purposes of configuration. So it can be the life cycle from actually creating and deploying the network function itself to actions such as, perform a backup of your data set, restore the data set, add subscriber, remove subscriber, etc. All of these things are actions that can be done. And as I mentioned before in the sort of day 1 configuration, integration also means that individual network functions can be declared as having a relation to each other, which then allows them to exchange data, such as I've got a AAA server that needs to know that there's going to be a diameter request coming in from the from a subscriber, or sorry, from some network functions. And so I need to open up my diameter stack and say, okay, this IP address is going to be in the allow list and you're going to accept clients from it. So that brings us to a model-driven operational lifecycle manager. And in OSM, we've used Juju to leverage a lot of that. Rather than reinvent the wheel, Juju does provide a lot of operator lifecycle management. It allows us to create and manage and destroy the full life cycle, of these things, the places where the code can execute. And it has a model that overlies all of this. So if we take this concept of Juju with models, and then we take a look at OSM itself, you can see that charmed OSM is basically a series of charms or functions, if you will, inside of an installation, and these individual units have relations to each other. For example, if I were to take a look at the NBI, which is right beside MySQL in the top row, the NBI, well, it needs to know about Mongo, it needs to know about Keystone, and it needs to know about Kafka. So rather than having any sort of encoding for passwords or whatnot in there, when Mongo comes up and NBI comes up, the two have a relation to each other, and the credentials for Mongo can be exchanged that way. So Charmed OSM, it deploys OpenStack MANO, all of the same containers, all of the everything that came from upstream. This is all upstream, but it adds this concept of relations to it, so that you can do things like have a password change or something like that, and have a day 2 operations that can go over top of this, scaling out units, making multiple copies of RO for high availability, etc. So with that, we come to our sort of bold vision statement that that this is an open source carrier grade model driven OSM with enterprise support, long-term security updates for the community, partners, and telcos, which is a fairly big mouthful to say that we're here for the community as well, but we're also paying very specific attention to make sure that this is top quality, production hardened, secure product. So I'm going to turn it over to David now to talk a little bit about how the different types of OSM installation and what OSM in a box actually means.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, so the standard installation of charmed OSM right now looks like this. We first get the installer from the ETI's website, and then we give it permissions, and then we execute the installer with --charmed. And what this basically does is it deploys all this. So it installs microgates, configures it. It does the same with LXD. It configures it and so on. Then it deploys Juju on top of microgates, and that Juju needs to know about microgates and also about LXD. So that LXD is added as a cloud to the Juju controller. And then after doing all that, it deploys charmed OSM on top of microgates. This installation process, it's a bit complex, and that's why all that is encapsulated in one script. And you don't see right away which are the exact steps that are being executed behind. So what we want to present today is a small installation profile that basically is an installation that is so easy that you don't need an installer. You don't need a script that will execute all these things and configure all these things, but it will be a really simple, and with just like 4 commands, which are really simple, you will be able to have OSM running. So it is main focused on Kubernetes. So the main purpose of this installation is to have the basic that we need to deploy OSM and use OSM to deploy KNFs. Therefore, LXD is not provisioned by this installation. Okay, so we basically won't be able to deploy machine-based operators or charms like LXD proxy charms, but well, we have an alternative that is even better and faster, that is the Kubernetes proxy charm. So the main purpose of this is to actually focus on Kubernetes and KNFs. And also it's ideal for developers because you will have in a matter of minutes and in a very, very simple way OSM ready to work with your KNFs. So this is how the small installation profiles would look like. So it simplifies things a bit. You will have just microcades, Juju on top, and then chunked OSM in a model, and that's it, nothing else. So now let's go through the installation steps. So we part from one VM, okay, or host machine where you have microcades installed. The installation of microcades is just like doing a sudo snap install microcades and then enable a storage and DNS, and then you got it. You don't need anything else. So 2 commands to install microcades, and then once you have microcades there, you do Juju bootstrap microcades. This command will bootstrap a controller to microcades, and so simple as that. Then we execute the Juju add model OSM to create a model where we are going to deploy OSM in it. And to finalize, we do a Juju deploy OSM. We give it some permissions, and well, right now this is in channel beta, so it's a preview that actually works, and you can try it out, and it will work for you. But it's not in a stable yet. So this is how the installer looks like. And then there's an additional thing. As you may know, this Juju is the operator lifecycle manager also for OSM itself. So there are some components like LCM that need the credentials to talk to this Juju controller. It needs to integrate with it. So right now, these credentials and stuff that LCM needs are parsed and passed to the LCM charm in the installation. Okay, so we don't want you to go and do the exact steps that are in the installation, which are a bit complex. So we encapsulated all that logic into one charm that is the VCA integrator, and that will get all the credentials from Juju and pass them to the LCM. So it will be really, really straightforward. You just need to execute this command that we will show in the demo, and you are done. So with those 4 commands that I showed, you have OSM ready to go. And well, to finalize, you can install the OSM client with sudo snap install OSM client, and get started by exporting the OSM hostname, which you can get by doing the Juju status nvr. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the demo. Okay, so I already did the Juju bootstrap microkits to save us some minutes. So now I have a controller in microgates. I can see that by doing kubectl get pods from all the namespaces, and here we see that we have the controller. Well, in fact, we have two controllers. I didn't know that. But yeah, this is the one that we are using. Okay, so let's add first a model. So you add model OSM. And if we do use status, we just have an empty OSM model with no applications. So now let's do deploy OSM, give it permissions, and then channel data. Okay, so we execute that. And basically, this will locate all the charms of charmed OSM in Charm Hub. That is the store with all the catalog of charms and so on. So you have their OSM, but you also can find many applications that have been charmed, and yeah, you can look them up there. Okay, so with that, we have OSM in our model. So this will take a bit to for everything to come up. Okay, so meanwhile, what I will show is the VCA integrator. Okay, VCA integrator is the name that it will have. Right now it is VCA proxy here. We need to change the name, but yeah, it's only the name that changes. Okay, so this VCA integrator needs to have the credentials of Juju. So where are these credentials? These credentials are in local share Juju. Okay, and here we can see some files like the accounts.yaml, controllers.yaml, and also another thing that we need is the SSH, like the public key for SSH into the machines and so on. So these three things are the things that we need to pass to the VCA proxy. So to do that, we basically need to execute the following command, which sets the configuration for the VCA proxy, and we set the name of the Kubernetes cloud, which is microgates, and then we pass the content of the controllers, okay, controllers.yaml to this controllers configuration option, and we do the same for the accounts and the public key. And I forgot that I need to set this variable, the Juju path, and execute the config command. Okay, with that, we are done basically. If we do Juju config VCA proxy, we can see how the public key is set, and we see this, that is the content of the controllers file and the accounts file. So the charm actually will do everything that it needs to do to integrate with LCM, and you don't need to do anything else. Okay, so let's see how is the installer going. Okay, while it finishes, I can show you in Kubernetes the OSM namespace and how the pods are being deployed. Okay, it shouldn't take long. I think we almost got it.
I was about to say the wonderful thing about demos, these things always take longer when people are watching. But yeah, it's finalizing itself now. It looks good.
Yeah. Okay, so while the last charms are coming up, which is now, okay, so now let's go and install the OSM client. Okay, and if we do, as was stated in the slides, if we do user status NVI, we can easily get the IP of the NVI, set the OSM host name to that IP, and we got an OSM that works, and it doesn't have LXD. It can deploy CNFs with no problem, and we didn't use any installer or anything, so it's less things to maintain, cleaner, and the footprint that it leaves is minimal. So we could just get rid of everything that we installed by killing the controller that we bootstrapped, and we have the machine in the same state as before. So this is the presentation. So thank you a lot. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Okay, just mention that these steps, I think you will be able to see them in the slides, right, Sylvia? They will have the slides available somewhere?
Yes, they are already in the wiki, so they can already go for it. Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, also feedback is greatly appreciated, and if you want to try it out and so on, I know that there were some people from Minolta, I think, that were interested in this feature. So if you want to try it out and give us feedback, we will do our best to make this even better.